There's the obligatory show off at the start of any video. So you want to be a jazz player. You want to play jazz guitar. In this video, I basically want to give you just a bit of a ramble about all the things I think after just a teensy 10 years of studying jazz and noodling around and all that kind of thing. So it's a first things first. You need to learn your fundamentals one way or another. You don't have to necessarily read music. I don't believe so anyway. You don't have to be able to read music really well and know all your theory. There are many ways you can approach learning, whether it be by shapes. At the end of the day, it's really about hearing. So if you learn all your scales by shapes and off chords and all that kind of thing, that can work too if you're an ear player. You don't have to be able to intellectualize everything to the nth degree. In fact, I think jazz is largely over-intellectualized these days because when I look at someone like Charlie Parker and look at what they play, it's major scales, minor scales, arpeggios, and just the clever use of those things. And yeah, I feel like it's the fundamentals, and then there's notes in between, but it's with intention, to arrive back at those fundamentals. So I'll get into it and we'll explain later. I'll explain. Who's we? There's no one else here. So what I first want to talk about is learning your major and your minor scales and your arpeggios, and why we want to do that and how we use them. So I'll do a little bit of playing. I just want to show you something. If we play, so these chords, I've already looped this, so I'll just Alright, so we're doing a progression there, and it's in the key of C. But obviously when we use an A7, we're going to be using a chord that uses notes not in C major. Now, a lot of early jazz will use progressions like this. The good news is, if you can play major scales, you can, major or minor scales, just basic scales, you can play jazz. It's really about probably the way you phrase it. Okay, so I'll just... Okay, so that was just using C major. Now, again, I don't think I've said it yet, but if at this point, if you're sitting here watching this, I'm hoping you've got some implied knowledge and it's something that you're already working on. But the first thing that we tend to want to do, I think a lot of players want to do when they start learning jazz, is really play complicated stuff and complicated ideas. Now, those ideas might seem complex, but they're all from just using the C major. It's like I didn't play even a single accidental there. If I did, it was an accident. That was a bad joke, sorry. Now, obviously, if it's you've got your key, you're in C, and then your chords, they may not use notes purely from C, but you've got to remember they sound the way they do because they've come from C. We're playing against the C, so that's what creates the tension. So in a way, you don't need to do anything. That tension's already there. So the first thing is learn your major scales, learn your minor scales. You're going to find it very, very useful. Now, arpeggios. Let's look at that basic progression. You want to be able to outline chords. Now, one of the main reasons you want to be able to do that, contradicting what I was just saying in a way, is that at times there will be chords that do not match that kind of take us outside of the key, okay? And there are times when you might want to, for the sake of interest, as a line player, you might want to capture some of those notes. Now, if you learn your arpeggios, you're going to get a good sense of where those notes are, okay? So that A7, for example, you would then learn the appropriate arpeggio, and you're going to find important notes, okay? So, for example, that's C sharp. Now, I really want to highlight something if you're getting into jazz, thirds, the third of a chord. And when I say third, I'm talking about the third note of a major scale. If it's a minor, then it would be the flat third. Okay, so whichever way you look at it, the third note, that is the most important note of a chord, is what you really need to understand. So if we go from C, E would be the third. With the A, C sharp is the third. A, B, C sharp. With a D minor, Well, with a D natural, okay, with D major scale, 1, 2, 3. Remember, we're always pertaining to the major when we talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We would be using a flat third though, because a minor entails a flat third, etc., etc. It's stuff you're going to hopefully learn down the track. But these tidbits now should help. I hope, maybe. So understanding particular notes that you want to capture. Now, it's going to be boring if you just play arpeggios, though. Okay, that's not that exciting. So it's not something you just want to do all the time. You don't just want to play arpeggios forever. But it informs you on where you can find certain notes that hopefully you're hearing. What have I put here? At the end of the day, you learn all your fundamentals, and they provide a basis in which for you to reference things that you hear in your head, reference things that you learn, that you like licks and ideas that you might learn from other musicians. Okay, because if you've got no basis, if you haven't learnt scales and stuff, it can be quite difficult to have a foundation to reference from. I think of it as like a bowling alley, and learning all your scales just sets up bumpers and checkpoints. Well, there's no checkpoints at a bowling alley, but the bumpers, the bowling ball goes down, bumps the edges, hits the pins. When you've got scales in your head, when you do a lick, you kind of got bumpers to work in and out of sort of boundaries and ideas, and when something is outside those ideas, at least you've got the understanding to know that it's outside that scale. So if it's, if you're playing in C major and you're grabbing a C sharp, at least you can go, oh, well, that's interesting. I'm playing one off the C, etc. So again, fundamentals are the most important thing. Now, modes. Okay, so modes are a hard one. I think that people use modes quite wrong. They'll say, well, I'm in C, so I can play an A aeolian. But if you're just playing over a C chord, or the overall tonality C, you're not actually really using aeolian. You're just playing C from another place. Modes is really when whatever mode you're using, you're using that as the sort of the home plate or your root note. So if we're playing an E Phrygian, okay, over an E, yes, that's E Phrygian. Okay, but over a C, it's just C natural. Okay, so try not to confuse modes. I don't even think that they're the most relevant. I think they've been a little bit over-intellectualized again, and a little used a little bit out of context, or just pushed a little bit too much. I mean, if you know your major scales, you're going to be playing modes anyway, because when the chords change, you're now technically playing in a modal sense, really. I guess one way you can look at modes is that if you see a piece of music and the key signature is, let's say, has an F sharp, and the first chord is an A minor, and it cycles and it comes back to A minor, then really now you're playing in a mode, because it's almost like the key signature is not, I don't really want to use this word, but it seems to fit. It's not consistent with what the song's based around. So if it was, so what I'm doing there, I'm playing in the rule. Let's say the rules of G, but I'm basing it right around A minor. And I can't remember. I'm having a mental blank on what key it's in. But I think you'll find So What and Night in Tunisia, a lot of those songs, they're based around chords that you're not going to find as a typical relative minor of a key, or from the major point of a key. So that's sort of how you know you're genuinely playing in a mode. The Simpsons theme song, actually, that. Alright, so see, we're in C, but in that melody there's an F sharp. So in a sense, that song, you could almost say, hints at the key of G, really sort of centered around G, but we're not actually, G's not our home plate, C's our home plate. So that's genuinely modal, don't mix it up with position playing. Okay, so now that's a whole lot of information. A bunch of different things using arpeggios, minor scales, major scales, modes. Now the next thing is, what should you do other than just learn all this stuff? How do you start applying it? Okay, my best advice is get a chart and pick a chart and get familiar with it. Now, rather than trying to do 10 charts and just working on... Now, when I say charts, I mean a jazz standard. So you might get something like All of Me or Autumn Leaves is a good one. There's common ones people suggest, but I guess it doesn't matter too much. The easier the key or the better. Something with less sharps and less flats is going to be easier. I guess a point I shouldn't forget is chords. Learn the chords and the melody if you can. Now, if you can't read music, you should do it by ear, because that's going to be a great exercise in itself. Now, in terms of improvising, learning those chords is going to provide, and I mean knowing them back to front. If you're really confused about how to apply stuff, first thing, learn a chart and learn the chords back to front. You really want to be able to hear the changes in your head, just like a blues. If you can play blues, you can play jazz. It's just that blues has less changes. A lot of guys that play blues, I guess, purely use pentatonics, and that makes life easy. But even then, you can feel where those changes are. When it's the end of the phrase taking us back to the start. I guess jazz is just kind of full of more of those moments, jumping around, and you need to be able to feel them and then play accordingly to those moments, per se. So get a chart, get to know it backwards so you know where the changes, where there's chords that particularly stand out that you want to capture, and you may use arpeggios to highlight them, or pick out key tones when you feel like there's been a shift in tonality. Now, another thing is, make sure you learn how to play chords in a variety of different ways, and try to gain an understanding through whatever means you can of all the options we have when we play chords. You don't have to play them from a root note. You can play them from their third. You can play them from their fifth. The understanding chord tones. Okay, so this is all stuff you're gonna have to work on, and I can't solve all your questions in one video, obviously. But check this out. So. Okay, so there's so many ways to play every one chord. So what I would do is take the chart that you choose to work on and try and find every variation of the chord that you can. It's not a simple task because there's a lot of ways to play chords. But take that one chart, try and work out as many ways as you can, have a look at what other players are doing. You're probably going to want to get a teacher, okay? And that's going to help a lot too, because they're obviously going to be able to help you. But at least applying yourself to one chart and experimenting and trying every option, it's going to be the best way to do it. Okay, so I've done a lot of that with particular charts, and I always improve so much when I focus on one chart and explore it to the death, because then you go to the next chart and you've got all these new skills that actually apply quite well. Now, I think I've covered most things here. I did right. Understand chords, learn standards. I think that I guess kind of covers it. I guess at this point, you learn your melody of the song, you learn the chords, and then you're gonna work on that one chart with improvising. And I just can't really stress enough that you want to practice all this stuff, but then when you gig or when you're improvising, you kind of want to just play honestly. You want to play what you're hearing, and don't try and overplay. So I'm gonna play you out. I'm gonna just improvise over that thing here. That reminds me, pentatonics. Don't forget about your pentatonics, your minor pentatonics, your blues licks, major pentatonics as well. Almost forgot that. Hopefully you stuck around and watched that. If you didn't, well, I guess you missed out. If you did, well, you got a little reward at the end there too. So anyway, I've tried to cover as many things I can think of. It's a little bit off the cuff. It's very off the cuff, this video, like all of my all of my videos. But hopefully you got something out of it, and of course, don't be afraid to ask questions and check out my other videos. I've got some videos that will teach you different other things too. Yeah. Okay. Goodbye.